Episode 2, Unbound. John Halo takes Kwan to an old friend and learns more about the mystery object that he found in the previous episode, which the Covenant and Makee are determined to steal. With the alien threat growing, Dr. Halsey has a plan to deal with John's unpredictable behavior. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Campfire Gaming Podcast Reviews, Halo the TV show. This week we're going to be covering episode 2, Unbound, as you probably heard in the intro. We're going to be kind of breaking down some of our thoughts and feelings. It's going to be the same kind of a rundown as last week, hopefully with a little bit less of the explanation of the story, but more of the discussion of what has happened. All right, so we're going to just kick it off right away. I'm joined with Heather, again, from last week. Hello, Heather.
Hello.
And, of course, none other than the one and the only Matt, my co-star of this whole operation. Matt, say hello.
Hello.
Along with myself, Rich, and we are the Campfire Gaming Podcast. Be sure to check us out online, campfiregamingpodcast.com. You can find our Discord, which we are also discussing all of the nitty-gritty details, posting memes, all that good stuff about Halo, the TV series, Halo in general, and all that good stuff. You can join us there. From our website, the link to the Discord will be on the webpage. From there, you can also find all of our other episodes, including our regular weekly episode, in tandem with this bonus content. You can also find our socials, Twitter being one of them, at Camp Game Pod. You can also find us on YouTube, Campfire. I believe it is youtube.com/Campfire Gaming Podcast. Is that right, Matt? Did I get that right?
You'll probably want to search for us, but yeah, we're there.
Yes.
We need more subscribers so we can actually have a legit URL with our Campfire Gaming Podcast. So
That's true. That's true.
when
So
you
just
visit,
look up
subscribe.
Campfire Gaming Podcast. We're the only one that you probably will find.
Yep.
All right.
We're the best one too if you find any others. So
Yes. All right. So going into week 2, we are coming off of a pretty I don't know, the last episode opened up pretty action-packed. I mean, we covered that last week with, kids getting their hands and arms and faces ripped off by plasma and all that good stuff.
Yep.
And then it kind of tapered off as far as the action. Just to recap a little bit, at the end of the episode, basically, John Halo, Master Chief, goes rogue and decides to take Kwan on a little space trip after he touched the Forerunner Artifact, got some flashbacks, that good stuff. So that's kind of the recap. Leading into this, that's basically where we open up with the episode 2, is that he's flying through slip space, and he ends up in an asteroid field. While this is all happening, we also get, I can't remember, is the flashback during this time? I mean...
for where we get introduced to the other Spartan.
Yeah.
That was kind of like the open to the show, and then we went into the intro, the show intro, and then we went into them heading to
right. Okay, so I got it mixed up then. Yeah. So yeah, the show opens with basically a flashback of Master Chief from essentially his Spartan training days, and you meet up with another young Spartan by the name of Soren. And I think even then he's got kind of a messed up arm. It's kind of implied that, a lot of the Spartans ended up pretty mangled and destroyed from training. This is pretty accurate to the books, if I remember. I've only really read Fall of Reach, so...
He also says it's from them. He says something about, they took his hand from him or something like that. He mentions that as well.
Okay. Yeah, so the augmentation process is clearly messing with a lot of these kids. And Soren is basically trying to escape. And John decides that he's trying to stop him, but I guess last minute he kind of has a change of heart. They have a really good back and forth dialogue about how, essentially Soren is getting woken up to all the nonsense that the UNSC is trying to fill their heads with, and the brainwashing and the drugs that they're taking and all that, and it's kind of tearing apart at John's worldview at what they're trying to do. And so he's trying to, basically be the what would you call it? Like he's trying to be the cop in this whole ordeal, and he's trying to stop him from running away.
Well, I almost did. You guys get the sense that the way Soren kind of first started talking to him was that maybe the original plan that John was actually going to join him in leaving.
That's true.
I kind of
Yep.
got that feeling a
Yeah,
little bit.
that's what I got too. I think that was the vibe that they were supposed to do, because that's
Yeah.
why he was so surprised. He's like, "Where's your suit?" and all of that. Like, why aren't you prepared?
Because that's kind of where, like, I kind of got that vibe, like they're trying to set up that kind of inner conflict that he's kind of, you see him as an adult kind of having, or that they're to me starting to portray. But like, because like he's sitting on the bed there, and like he looks over at Soren's bed, which is empty, and it kind of like he pauses, and yeah, it really got, and then obviously then to the conversation with Soren, it really came across that like he was going to go, but he was torn, and he ultimately decided that he wasn't going to go, and then he was going to stop Soren, which then obviously through the conversation we see that
He
he gives him
doesn't.
5 minutes. Yeah,
He
5 minutes.
he asks for 10, and John, being the asshole that he is, gives him 5 instead. I mean, if there's one thing that I'm learning about Master Chief in this Silver timeline is that he's kind of a dick.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm getting that vibe too.
Yeah, he's kind of an ass and not a very good friend and we'll probably break that down to the rest of the episode. He kind of carries that forward, I think, through the rest of the episode.
Yeah. But it was, I'll say, as
Did you like
someone who
Okay.
who read quite a bit of the books, it was
Yeah.
a nice little callback to one Soren. He is one of the, as we saw in the show, he was one of the Spartans that went through the augmentation process and got it just really kind of mangled him. Now in the show, it looks like it's just his hand.
Yeah.
In the books, he got a little bit more deformed,
Mhm.
quite a bit. But it was nice to kind of. I really enjoyed seeing Soren and his character kind of pop up in this show. It was a little odd though, seeing that again. This is more on how they're taking the Silver timeline, is that he chose to escape in the Silver timeline, where in the book timeline or game or whatever universe that's called, I don't know, he kind of had a desk job for a while, had somebody whispering in his ear about the insurrectionists, and sympathizing with them, and then ultimately went off to join them. But if I remember correctly, did he end up at the rubble, which we'll get into? I can't remember if he did that in the books or not.
I mean, that's going to be your area, not mine.
Yeah, I
I don't
don't
even know
remember
what
that
book
one.
does he end up showing up in.
I think it was one of the Halo like Essentials or something was called. It was a lot of short stories.
Oh.
So it's not like he had his own big book, and it definitely for you, someone who read the first couple books, he wasn't in that. But
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
don't remember this character.
there was mention of other Spartans that failed the augmentation that kind of fell out.
Right. Yep.
So
Oh, that mean
it,
like they either died or got massively
yep,
deformed or something like that, or it didn't really impact them or something, and they weren't able to be Spartan. Like it was a pretty brutal process, according to the books describe it as a pretty brutal process, and I think that's kind of what they were going after.
yep,
Okay,
yeah.
so I mean, so Heather, do you think that this kind of did any of this really like coming from the books, it kind of makes sense, but given that you haven't really come from the books, does this kind of did the way that they portray it kind of makes sense?
I mean, I guess so. Like they kind of fill in the blanks for me. Like I said, like I said in the previous episode, I feel like this is trying to get people like introduced to the franchise, just maybe not so
Hmm.
much in the lore way. So I felt like it kind of made sense.
Yeah, so it definitely did it do a pretty good job of kind of expanding that sort of backstory of Master Chief.
Yeah, like I kind of I mean, don't get me wrong, I can't write a memoir on his life, right? But I understood what was going on there. I didn't think
Okay,
that there was anything that was hard to understand.
cool.
Did you think so?
Well, I mean, I've privileged to know a little bit of background on the books, so I kind of get the idea of like what's happening in this time frame. I get some of the references. I don't know who Soren is, but I can see what, like, I can infer what's going on about, like, oh, they have a shot of like the empty beds, and it's like, oh yeah, I know, it's because a lot of these kids are ending up dead, and they go missing. And I even think in the books, like, I think John or Master Chief kind of takes it personally too. Um,
Well,
when some of the first group of Spartans end up dying to the augmentation process.
yeah, it was one of the times where he felt helpless,
Yeah.
right? He slowly through the training up to that point led the rest, kind of rose to the top, ended up being that kind of leader of all the Spartans. And, in a way he looked at it as taking him into a battle that he had no control over. And so
Mm-hmm.
he was going to lose people. So yeah, it hit him, if from what I remember, it hit him pretty hard in the books. But
Right.
Well,
Okay.
and so I guess the thing that I want to say is maybe this is just my understanding when I watched it, right, is like I didn't get it that they were dying from the augmentation process specifically, but like I did notice like the way thing that I got is like it's military esque, right? And then obviously they hate it there. Obviously, things are going wrong because you have somebody mutated, right? But I'm like they don't straight up like ham fist feed you that, oh yes, this augmentation process is killing people, but through the conversations you can kind of pick it up that whether it's the augmentation process, whether it's their like training and testing of them to become superhuman, like things are going wrong, right? And it's
mhm,
kind of a crapshoot to be there.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, he gives John gives him 5 minutes, and then from there we basically cut from the intro into the rest of the episode, where um what I was explaining earlier is that John is taking Kwan Ha to the rubble, which is a setting that is also, I think, only mentioned in the books. I don't think that they ever really cover this in the games. The only reason I realized it was from the books is because somebody in Discord, I think, mentioned it.
Mhm,
And basically, it's this big asteroid where a lot of, I guess it's insurgents, but it looks like it's kind of like a almost like a criminal underground sort of place that's like a city built into like a big cluster of asteroids.
yep.
And so that's where they arrive, and that's where he's taking Kwan with that Forerunner artifact. So he's carrying that with him. They're walking through a bunch of streets. Some hilarity ensues with the forklift. And then that's when he ends up meeting Soren. So, we build up this flashback, meet Soren so that we can re-meet Soren at the rubble. He's got his armor on. He meets with Master Chief, recognizes him, and he kind of takes him in with Kwan Ha to his house. From there they kind of go into this discussion about the artifact and the training. He's still constantly pushing Master Chief's worldview on the UNSC being a Spartan and all that sort of thing. A lot of this episode really was just a lot of talking. It was a lot
Mhm,
more world building and talking than last week's episode, where we had quite a bit of action from the get-go, and it was more like, I guess this was a lot more, yeah,
yeah.
expanding world building. Some people say filler. I don't know if I necessarily agree with filler per se, but like it felt like they were really just trying to, it was like an exposition dump of an
Mhm,
episode. So
yeah.
I mean, kind of going into like the setting of like the rubble and all that. I mean, what did you guys think of, did the rubble kind of carry what your expectations of the books, or what were your thoughts, Heather, about this whole setting of like living in an asteroid and all the different things that had happened while they were on the rubble?
Matt, do you want to go first on this, or do you want me to take
Yeah,
point here?
you go ahead. You got it.
All right, I got this. So, for me, honestly, like I had heard that this was like a bad episode, right? And like it was just boring people talking and stuff like that. I actually quite enjoyed it. I mean, I
Yeah.
have my little problems here and there with like I don't understand why Soren is so willing to help Master Chief, and on
Mhm,
top of that, why is he so willing to take him into his home and still trying to get him when he even talks about like 5 minutes literally almost got him killed. Like
yeah.
I don't understand that dynamic. It's just kind of like, oh yeah, all is forgiven. Time heals all wounds, I guess. Because it
Except for
doesn't
his
seem
arm.
like right. Like what I know of the games, like I don't remember them talking about Soren in the game. I could be wrong, but I don't remember that anywhere. And so it's
No.
like they in the games they don't seem to have kept in contact. And here, like I get that we've only had one episode, but there's like even in this episode here, like they don't. established that they kept in context. I don't understand why he's so willing
Mm-hmm.
to take him in. I expect a little bit of bitterness there, but honestly, I really kind of like this. I feel like, especially again, like I stand by what I said. This is for people who don't know that much or didn't really like read the books, or they're not lore masters, or maybe they just know of the characters. Like this sets up a lot of good things, and I thought it was really cool what they were doing. You have that goofy guy who lived to be like, he was among the Covenant and lived, and so you talk about his craziness and stuff like that. Like
Right.
I don't know, I really liked this, and I really liked the rubble area. Like I thought it was really cool. I definitely got like this actually felt like a rebel camp, right? Like I am
Mm-hmm.
actually incognito in space away from the UNSC. People, you have to know where it is to find it, type of a thing.
Right. And you kind of get that idea when Master Chief, comes out of slip space when they're first arriving and he's kind of
Yeah.
dodging through all these different asteroids and things like that to like, get to where the rubble actually is.
Right.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to know how he knew where it was, but other
Yeah.
than that, willing suspension of disbelief here, right? So, like, honestly, I quite enjoyed this, and I thought the Rebel was like a really cool place.
Right. That is, I mean, you bring up a good think right there is that like if he knows where this place is, you have to imagine that the UNSC also knows where this place is.
But
Like
they
it's not
don't
like he would
seem to.
hide, yeah, it's not like they would hide this information from him or something like,
But
like
we
he would hide the information from them or something.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
I mean, which again, this is where like that convenient or lazy
That
writing or however,
convenience. Yeah.
right? Because like you could assume that like, oh well, maybe the UNSC knows, but then we get that very short scene with the rest of the Silver Team that are on that frigate, and they're like, well, we don't know where he went, but they were following some like slip space trail or something. They're like, it looks like he's near asteroid, right? They were confused too. So I mean, I guess that could be just, you know,
It was
maybe
really
the rest of
convenient. He just
yeah,
happens to know where Soren lives.
yeah.
I think it's just that, like, he just happens to know where Soren lives. I'm gonna hope that they put up some sort of, like, as they go on, they have flashbacks of like why Soren is so friendly with him and why he knows where Soren is and all of this stuff. Because I didn't I didn't get that mean that if he knows, that means the UNSC knows.
Hmm.
Like right now, so if we take a step back, right, like forget what you know of the lore, forget what you know of like the games and stuff like that, in just what they've built, right? We know that Master Chief is conflicted, right?
Mhm.
We know that he doesn't always do what he's told, because that's what he is doing now. We don't know if that's a thing in the past, or like if that's a new thing, right? But we know that he doesn't always do what he's told, he doesn't always listen to commands, and we know that he
Hmm.
hides things from his superiors, because he clearly never told anybody about what happened to Soren and all that kind of stuff. Like he reported him, but he never was like, yeah, he's probably about 5 minutes that way, He always
Well,
told him, and
remember,
he went
he
Yeah,
that
tried
he
far,
stopping
right?
him, but his gun jammed.
his gun
Right,
jammed. Yeah, he was giving
right,
like a phony report. Yeah.
Yeah.
right. So we know he keeps things from the UNSC, right? Just in this world building,
Hmm.
in this world that they've built. So I think it's plausible to say that just because he knows, it doesn't mean that the UNSC knows, right?
Yeah, I
So
guess that's a
in
good
the
point.
world that they've built, right?
Yeah.
So
But
that's kind of where I'm coming from.
yeah. Again, this is more book stuff, but like the Spartans trust each other in the books. Again, that doesn't mean that translates to that's how all the Spartans trust each other in the Silver timeline. Again, which could explain, well, why didn't the rest of the Silver team know about all this? Blah blah blah. Right.
Mhm.
But
Yeah, yeah, it's a little bit of creative liberty convenience
yeah,
is what I think that kind of was. Yeah. I
I
mean,
mean, I
yeah,
think.
like you're right. Like it's funny how they make him sound like in the first episode he's basically just a UNSC robot that just only follows orders, but we can see that even way before all that, he was still, he still had the aptitude to disobey, to kind of fudge orders, to kind of, work through
Mhm.
his own plan. So
Right. To
yeah, it's
technically comply.
yeah, to technically comply. So it's like that's interesting that yeah, like he goes from I only follow orders, touches the artifact. Now I don't really follow orders anymore, but never really like was great at following orders from the get-go, like even when he was young and in training. Now maybe that's
Hmm.
because he hadn't taken enough pellets yet, or he
Yeah.
wasn't given enough, yeah, enough hamster pellets for his through his armor. But it's
Yeah.
something, I guess, something interesting to think about. It's just a little bit more nitpicks that I suppose
Well,
that I have.
so that's what I'm saying, right? Is like in the world that they've built, they didn't build him as a robot. They built him as an image of a robot, right? Like, as far as the UNSC knows that he's a robot, but what
Mm-hmm.
we're coming to find out as the audience is that he doesn't exactly do everything that he says. He does, like you said, he technically complies, right? So as far as they know, military, yes, I did. No, I didn't. Yes, he did, right? But in
Mm-hmm.
reality, he may have done something like, he let Soren go. And so, yeah, he held him up, but oh, he wasn't able to get him, but he still did his job by trying to help hold him up.
Mm-hmm.
He's still complying with their orders, even though he was the one that was also going to go with him. You know what I mean? Like, I don't I don't know that it's necessarily a gripe for me. I guess agree
Yeah,
to
that's fair.
disagree there.
Hmm.
That's fair. So I mean, from there, I mean, while we're talking with Soren, I mean, we kind of get a little bit more exploration on Soren and kind of what he's been up to. He's got a lot of, he's got basically his own smaller asteroid home, and they take that goofy like Temple of Doom cable cart to get from the main part of the rubble over to Soren's house. But from
We
there,
had to add some excitement to the
I know,
episode.
yeah, it was just so I was just like, this has got Spielberg written
Between that
all
and
over it.
the
Yeah.
asteroid, the asteroid field, I was just like, okay, that's our excitement for the episode.
Yeah, and that is pretty much where the buck stops, more
Hmm.
more or less. I mean, from there, I mean, we're in Soren's home. We meet that he's got a family. His wife shows Kwan Ha, like, I guess, some drone feed where she sees on Madrigal you have um, Visner. We mentioned it earlier, Vishner or something like that.
Vinsher
Vinsher.
Grass.
Yeah, Vinsher. He's executing a bunch of insurrectionists on Madrigal. And then,
Yeah.
yeah, he pops a couple of shots off at the drone. How she knows this drone is existing or why that drone was there, who knows? But yeah, she saw it all. She saw that her people were getting executed, and it's kind of
Hmm.
building up this subplot of Kwan's revenge for Madrigal, I guess. Not the most
Yeah.
like not the most like interesting thing because I mean yeah like we're here to watch Master Chief and his exploits. I don't really care so much
Hmm.
about what Kwan Ha does with Madrigal because
Yeah,
who
it's just
cares?
kind of another, almost like another story thread. They kind of planted the seed last episode by introducing this Fincher Grath guy
Yeah,
from just like a TV screen, but it, it it sounds like that. Yeah, that might be Kwan's kind of story going forward, because we find out in this episode that this Fincher Grath guy was always at odds with her father, and now that her father's gone, there's a power vacuum there, and he took over. Which then we also find out when we get some of the Reach scenes is that he's actually kind of a UNSC plant, and he's actually, and it ends up, helping, or was it, creating an alliance with the UNSC. I think we see at the end, by the end of the episode. So,
correct.
but it's also just this, it's kind of a little bit of a complaint with the Venture Grath and the magical stuff is kind of similar to the High Charity and Makee stuff, is like they keep teasing this stuff, and it's like, I'm ready for more. Like, stop this little, like, barely
Stop
anything last
playing with
episode.
me and give me something to play
Yeah,
with.
like,
Yeah.
let's I've watched Game of Thrones. I can handle 18 different storylines going at once. Like, let's just get into this. Like, I want to know more of these things, which, I mean, I guess that's a good thing because that's going to keep me coming back each week to hopefully get a little bit more of what's going on in Madrigal and what's going on in High Charity. But
Mm-hmm.
it can
Am I
also be a
the
little
only one?
frustrating.
Am I the only one that doesn't care what goes on at Magical?
No,
Well,
I don't either.
I was gonna say,
That's what
like,
I was saying. I don't give a shit about what is going on in Madrigal. I'm here for the chief. I'm not here for Kwan Ha.
right. I mean, I'm. It's not even necessarily that I'm not here for that I'm here for the chief. It's just simply that, like, they didn't do anything to earn my interest in it. It's
yeah.
just some. It just feels like some plot they're shoving down my throat. Here's a thing for you to also do while we figure out what's happening with the chief and all of
Hmm.
that business.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I think this,
We need a B plot for something. So let's just shove a B plot in here, and we'll call
She's
it
his
and
good.
I
baby Yoda.
I think
Really?
I think that's the problem with them dropping the high charity and the magical stuff in, or well, again, I guess a lot took place on magical last episode, but this Venture Grath and the high charity stuff is they keep just dropping a little bit, and to your point, the magical stuff is, why am I seeing this? Why should I care? Where I'm actually the opposite with the high charity stuff is like, I like this. Why don't you
Mm-hmm.
show
Oh,
me more of this? So,
I'm
Right.
with you for the high charity.
yeah,
Like, I'm with you, but like I said, I don't care about the Baby Yoda plot here. Like,
yeah.
she is literally just ride
Just
along.
along for the
You
ride.
do what I
Yeah.
say. You don't get to speak super often. Don't worry, we'll bring you to a place where people will love you and train you.
Yep.
Like,
And
Right.
let's also mention the fact that it's hard to take her serious at all with that insanely stupid haircut. When I watched through the
You
episode
really hate
again,
that haircut.
it's
dude,
just a
he's right though.
stupid
The haircut
haircut.
is terrible.
It's
It's just like
distracting.
a pseudo mullet.
It's like, maybe I'm going to start taking you serious. Nope. Then they show your head and your stupid haircut. It's like,
At least
nope.
she cleaned the blood off her face.
Yeah, that was good. That was
Yeah.
good. Finally.
She got the blood off her face somehow. Okay, so as we're, hanging out with Soren and those folks too, that's when Master Chief and Soren kind of have this conversation about the Forerunner Artifact, and Soren explains about some guy that's living on the rubble who was captive of the Covenant and survived,
hmm
and he's kind of insane. And he brings him to basically let Master Chief talk to him about this Forerunner. Well, we know it as Forerunner, but the show doesn't know it as Forerunner yet. This artifact that when
Yep.
Master Chief touches it, it gives him strange memories of probably his family. We think it's his family. We don't know it's his family, but we're pretty sure it's his family.
It's someone else's family.
It could be somebody else's family.
It's a Blade
The
Runner
only thing we
2049
know,
plot.
right? Yeah, we only know that that the Covenant refer to them as the Blessed Ones. We know that Makee can do it too. She has a conversation with the
Prophets.
with the prophets as the whole council there, which was actually really really cool to see. By the way, like I
Yep.
thought that was fantastic. It's so cool seeing like the Covenant side of things. Like I really wish that if there were any A and B plot, it would be the A plot is Master Chief, the B plot is stuff happening on the Covenant side of things.
hmm
To me, that's super cool because that's in tandem with the games. That's kind of the whole what makes a lot of this world super interesting is
Yep.
what's happening on both sides. Shame that Makee is a human, but we'll get into that. That's what's I guess part of
Yeah.
what's driving the story is that humans are the only one that can really activate these artifacts. And they talk with her, and she says, "I want to go, get this artifact. I want to go and." I don't remember what she was asking them to do. She was trying to get down to a planet of some sort, basically infiltrate because she's human and she can blend in with a lot of the humans and find
Mhm.
artifacts for the Covenant.
Yeah. So I mean, like, I think the reason she really wanted to go find this thing is because it was probably news to her. As we found out, another deviation from what we're familiar with the games and the books is, instead of all humans being, reclaimers, or that's, it seems to be only certain people. And as we've seen the show, it's just Master Chief and Makee right now. Or I assume we're assuming Makee, right? We haven't seen her actually touch Forerunner stuff. We're told she's a blessed one. So I think she kind of was maybe a little shaken, right? She probably thought she was special.
Yeah.
And then to find out there's somebody else that can touch something and sorry, in my mind, I keep replaying the stupid elite, which the elites look amazing in this.
Sure.
But his little
redraws the circle.
Yeah, she asked the elite to show me what happened when it was the elite that escaped from the first episode, and he does this weird pointing thing. But anyways, yeah. So to me, it just felt like she was a little bit shaken there because of the fact that
There's
are more
another
than
human.
one. She's not unique.
Right.
Well, and
She's not the
I
only
think
human who
that's-
can activate it.
I think that's rightly so, right? Like, isn't that kind of what they build? When you talk back on the rubble, they talk about the guy who was among the Covenant,
Covenant,
and he basically went crazy and talks about how horrible it is there for if you're not one of the chosen ones. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Right.
So to know that she's not the only one to do it makes her not, indispensable. So
Mm-hmm.
now she suddenly has some, like, they could just decide, you know what, we don't need you, we'll just keep him alive, you know.
Just yeet her out an
Yep.
airlock or something.
Exactly. So it sounds like, you know, it's a scary thing to be with the Covenant and not be needed,
Yeah.
because it sounds like they will throw you out like with last week's trash, right? And they're
Yeah.
gonna do it in, you know, the waterboardy kind of way. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
so I
Yeah.
mean,
No more food nipple access.
exactly. I understand fully. I feel like that why she's a little shaken by it.
Yeah. And I mean that makes sense. And yeah, she's trying to basically set this up that she's going to be trying to integrate with some sort of human faction so that she can find more of these artifacts and activate
Mm-hmm.
them. But it was fun. Let's talk a little bit about that, like that little scene where Master Chief is talking to the guy's name is Reth, by the way. He's talking to Reth, who is the crazy dude who was on board the Covenant something. You know,
Yep.
I don't know if he was on High Charity or if he's just a cruiser, or he was with the Covenant for an extended period of time and eventually found his way off of the Covenant, out of the Covenant's clutches. So he's, first off, I think he was doing a very, very good job of overacting how crazy he was. And two,
I
he was explaining to the chief a lot of like, this is where a lot of like the exposition dump kind of comes into play, where he explains all of this stuff about
mm-hmm.
yeah, like the blessed ones, and they found some artifact, and there's a halo, and there's you know, they're on some sort of a mission. Oh, by the way, the halo is a weapon, and like he just lays it all
Yep.
out for everybody to hear. And then you
Mm-hmm.
get Master Chief has his own Batman moment. Instead of where are they, it's what am I? He gets all angry.
I personally hated this entire scene.
Did you?
From I thought one, the set design and kind of trying to set up that environment that they went to, and then I thought Reth, like to your point, was just overacting. It was just yeah, and then again, I'm a book game nerd, so just seeing a different chief is sometimes hard. So seeing a chief that doesn't keep his head and keep his cool and you know try to figure problems out, and then him just kind of go little ape shit, for a second on Reth was just like
Right.
this ain't chief.
Yeah, the
He
only
doesn't have these breakdowns where he lets his emotions get the best of him. Like,
right. The only time I ever remember Chief yelling ever is that when Cortana and 343 Guilty Spark are bickering back and forth and he just goes, "Enough."
yep,
That was the extent of his yelling. He doesn't really
yep.
yell after that.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I don't like that either. I don't like that he gets so unbelievably emotional, considering he's supposed to be somebody who's kind of had suppressed emotions, and
Yep.
he's a very like repressed individual, which is why you end up needing something like Cortana to help balance that out, right? Like that's
I'm yeah.
why
I mean,
she exists technically.
they're setting that up
Right.
in the show. They're like, this is somebody that's unstable, and they need Cortana, which he doesn't know about. But I mean, yeah, as far as the scene with Reth, this was kind of we finally are starting to get a little information on the Forerunner, kind of what the Covenant goals are, what they're doing, and it just again just kind of odd though, like the whole like it Reth's journey. And this will be interesting to see how Makee came into play too, because Reth made it sound like the Covenant are capturing a bunch of humans to test them to see if they're blessed ones, and then I don't know if he was crazy before or became crazy through what they did to him, but then they either kill him or spit him out or however he escaped. So
Mm-hmm.
See, I kind of agree with you and I kind of disagree with you. So I thought Reth was awesome. I truly think that he nailed it. Like we're talking like some of the best acting in the show, in my opinion. Like
hold
I
up. The best acting in the show so far has been my man Chevy Tahoe. Okay.
Chevy Tahoe.
yeah, but that's a given. So like
He blends
there's
in
Chevy
so
Tahoe
well.
acting, and then there's everybody else. Okay, here, so we're in the everybody else character or category here. But like he sold it that like that dude's seen some stuff, and like
Mm-hmm.
he is, like he's seen things you can't unsee, and like he fully understands what they're trying to do and at what costs they're going to do it. Like I was getting that out of him. I'm with you on the set design. I was very confused with the set design. Like I couldn't decide if he's like supposed to be some prisoner. Is he supposed to
Yeah.
be like down there because he's so crazy? He's a danger to everybody else on this rock. So there's
Hmm.
law in this lawless place, or like
That's just
didn't
where he
understand it.
lives. Yeah,
And I
he
was
can come and
also
go.
like really confused by he made them shut the door, and then Kwan Ha
Yeah.
comes in and leaves the door open, and he's like, "That's fine, you can leave the door open." But
Yeah.
everybody else, nope,
Well,
nope.
that's the thing that
Yeah,
made me
whatever.
laugh was that, yeah, to your point, like, was this a prison? Was it an asylum? Was it a little bit of both? And then it was just like they walk up to his cage thingy or whatever it was, and they just walk in. I'm like, oh, like what is this? Like,
Yeah, like I didn't understand it either. I thought that was a little weird.
it's not locked, so it must not be a cell, and it's not a padded room, so maybe it's not a crazy house. Like, I don't know. It was weird.
Yeah, maybe
It's so weird.
that's the slum living. When you can't
Yeah.
afford much on
I mean,
rubble, you get that. I don't
I mean,
know.
to be honest, that's kind of what I thought it was. Like after Kwan Ha just kind of like meanders through the door, I'm just like, oh, okay, so really this is just his house. He's just got kind of a that's his living space, I guess.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but then
really
why
weird.
can't anybody else get out and go talk to, or and like get in their way when they're on their way to see him? And
I
he's like,
guess that's true.
don't
Yeah,
worry, I
because
brought
Yeah.
churros.
yeah,
Like
Well, that's
he was Soren was feeding churros to the I guess prisoners because they couldn't open the door. I guess
yeah.
yeah,
So
it's super
that's what I
confusing.
don't. That's what I don't know. So like I don't understand the set design. I don't really understood what's happened there. And
hmm
also, since we're here, I guess Matt, maybe you can answer these two questions for me. Why is Master Chief like surprised that Soren has a kid? Like, is there something in the books about how it makes him sterile or
yes.
something like that? Is it something like the Jedi Order they're not allowed to? Like,
Uh,
I, I
so
don't
so
understand.
Spartan
in the
Fallen Order.
silver, yeah, in the silver timeline, it's sounding more like Jedi Order. Just, don't have that distraction. In the books, the augmentation really, messes with their body and makes them. I don't remember the detail. I don't think there's anything removed, but it just threw a bunch of the hormones and the bone grafts and the muscle this and blah, all this crap that they do. Like they physically like re-engineer these Spartan 2s, but through that process were like they came out sterile, right? So
Okay.
uh you know clearly they kind of brought that idea over, but it sounds like, as we found whenever Soren and Chief were talking in Soren's home, was there's some sort of pellets that are
Yeah.
in the suit that are, I'm assuming that leads into the whole kind of keeping them brain dead, memory loss,
Well, we heard about that, right?
yeah.
That's something that Halsey mentions, is like that's the exact function of them, right?
hmm
Because they talk about like, well, when they find him, they've got to find a way to basically terminate him. And she's like, "No, you can't terminate him. We've been ahead of this the whole time, right?"
yeah.
And then she talks about how the pellets, their job is to kind of deaden them a little bit so that they
hmm
want to be yes men. Oh, you
yeah.
want me to
Yeah.
go do that? Yep. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. You know. And in this case, the pellets aren't working, and that's why Cortana is your next option.
Yeah.
That's why the sales pitch works,
Well,
right?
I think some of it is the pellets and the conditioning are, well, the conditioning has been cracking for Chief, as we saw at the opening, and so then the pellets in turn aren't doing their best job, right? So he's starting to kind of wake up essentially, but he's still, it's yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, it's he's starting to wake up because yeah, like he touches the Forerunner Artifact again, and it kind of just sends out a nice big blast wave, and then basically from there he packs up and decides to leave, and then he leaves Kwan behind. He asks Soren, "Hey, can you watch Baby Yoda for me?" And he's like, "Yeah, okay, I guess." And then he leaves without her. And then I
Yeah.
think this is when this kind of cues that whole like Venture Madrigal sort of subplot thing going on, because now they're separated, and then yeah, Master Chief just goes right back to Blue Team. They're on the Stalwart Dawn, I believe is what the ship is called. He just
So
turns himself in, and then they take him back to Reach, and then he is in a prison cell.
so like as they're leaving, you see him like executing rebels and stuff like that. I thought there were no survivors.
Of that encampment.
Oh,
Oh,
so these are
on
supposed to be just
Madrigal.
other people.
Yeah,
on
I'm assuming that
Madrigal.
those were not the only people on Madrigal, that there was
I,
other like cities and things like that.
it kind of depends, right? Is it how much of an outpost is this? I don't know. Like it
Yeah, it
could
was just like
be,
a hydrogen
one set of
farm.
rebels somewhere, or it could be like 8 rebel cities on a planet that the UNSC can't touch for some reason, but actually they can because Spartans showed up.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't
So
know.
I don't know.
Yeah, they weren't clear on who they were killing and why.
He's
I
just
mean, like,
executing people.
I
Yeah,
mean,
he was just
you
blasting people, citing Shakespeare, I think.
you could gather from some other tidbits left in the show that they potentially were Kwan like sympathizers or friends or something, colleagues of Kwan's dad, which then is again that the power vacuum was there, so he just come in and he's just killing everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, they're nobodies. They're like he's just shooting them, and I'm like, okay, well, I mean, it sucks for them, but who are they? Why do I care?
Right. That's
Mm-hmm.
part of my problem with this guy, and part of why I'm not interested in this subplot is because, like, yeah, it's terrible that he's just point blank executing people, and that he seems to be working with the UNSC. Like they're showing you that the UNSC, not all of it is, all roses. With the
Hmm.
whole you're gonna murder a teenager just because she doesn't want to, because she says fuck the establishment. And then you go into and you put this guy in power, and he's just murdering people just to murder people. Like that's great. Like I get it, big military, like overlord, bad,
I
got it.
know.
But
Vansher is
I
like every bad D&D player I've ever played with.
yeah, and I just don't get it, and I think that's one of my hardest
Hmm.
sells.
Yeah.
But then I also think it's weird. Like, so she's clearly appalled, right? So, like, we know that it's somebody that she either knows or cares about, or somebody that cares about her in some sense, and she feels some sort of like allegiance to these people in some way, shape, or form, right? Like, we can kind of get that, and we can get that she's appalled that, this guy specifically is in charge. But, like, what is she supposed to do on this place? Because if I'm her, like, I don't trust Soren. I don't know who he is. Like,
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
he's
Yeah.
some dude. Who says they're not gonna murder me afterwards? And if
Right.
yeah.
if Master
Especially
Chief's a
since
Spartan, who says that he's not a Spartan that's gonna, turn me in? Or maybe he's like, some double agent for something. Like, clearly more than one person is looking to kill her. They mentioned that too. Is that like,
she's got a bounty on her
yeah,
head. They
she's got a
mentioned,
bounty
yeah.
on her head, and they're like, "Oh, you know about the UNSC bounty?" And she's like, "Oh no, she's got that too. Oh, okay." So, like, if I'm her, like, I don't feel safe. I would
You want to know?
not want to be there. Like,
You want to know why she's safe? Because Soren's kid put a smiley face on
Yep,
Master Chief's hand.
yep, they're
They're
friends now.
bros. Yep, they're bros for life.
pretty much.
Yep,
Yeah,
and
but
that's
but
why.
bros before hoes. She's just a hoe that's in the way. Savage.
All right.
Sorry.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. So back at Reach, we have Chief in a cell. We have a council of UNSC brass chit-chatting it up, and this is probably the most boring part of the entire
Hmm.
episode, in
You
my
you
opinion.
forgot to mention that he drives 5 feet away from the asteroid and then flips on his homing beacon.
That's true.
I
Yeah.
Don't get me started on the asteroid. Like one kind of going back a little bit, like how we already asked the question of like how did he know it was there, but like he just comes out of slip space and it's just like right in an asteroid field. I'm like, what the hell? Like this is just stupid. And then yeah, when he leaves, it's like nope, it's just free sail and there's nothing in the way. Like
Oh yeah, you can fly over the asteroid field.
yeah,
Actually,
yeah.
turns out he just didn't know that before, I guess.
We just needed that excitement in
Yeah,
the episode. And that was the way they did it.
it's
So
very forced. Yes. So then, yeah, now that he's back on Reach, you have, I believe that was Lord Hood that was leading sort of the conversation.
yep.
With Captain Keyes, Parangoski, Halsey, like the whole rest of the cast is sitting around a boardroom, kind of chit chatting about what to do about Master Chief, what to do about AWOLing Spartans. Halsey brings up the Cortana program. She gets the stink guy from Parangoski, who reluctantly kind of agrees that yes, we are testing out the Cortana program, and I guess this was kind of like their attempt at making Halsey seem kind of manipulative, but like
It fell
the person
flat.
who can that gets a person who gets their way by manipulating the perception of others. I don't know why Parangoski didn't just be like, no, I didn't authorize that, and then just
Yeah.
end the conversation there. She's just like, okay, whatever, I guess I'll roll with this. because I'm interested now. Like I was so confused by a lot of that, and I didn't understand why all of a sudden the change of heart when last episode she was bitching up a storm about how Halsey is keeping this Cortana program thing running, and she told her to shut it down, and then she's pulling
Mhm.
funding from the Spartan program and yada yada
But
yada.
wasn't that something to do with because she was invested in the Spartan program? Like, it's one of those like if the Spartans have to pull out and we have this menace around here that I've introduced, there's no coming back from that. Like, she's kind of in a situation of like do and don't. Like, if it doesn't matter if you do or you don't, like you're damned either way. Because like if Master Chief, right, they've created this specimen of a war machine, if you will, right? He's unreliable, and now they've basically built this thing that they cannot combat that is unreliable, right? Now she's in trouble because they're in a real bad spot, right?
Mm.
If they have a way that they've been working on to control with and it goes south, well, now she's in trouble because she just kind of was doing this underhand. Like, she's kind of damned if she does, damned if she doesn't. But I thought it was more so that she's so heavily invested in the Spartan things that, like, part of her, it seems like almost part of her career is made off of that Spartan project as well, from what they were trying to put together. That she's just like that.
I mean,
She's just kind of like, I guess I go with it because
I
it's her
guess, but
suicide.
yeah, I mean, I guess, but she was literally the same person who was talking about pulling the plug on the whole thing just last
Yeah.
episode. She was ready to be like, yeah, we're going to cut the funding off. We're going to shut down the program. You're not going to make Spartans anymore. And we're done with this. And she was
Mhm.
like, that was her decree. And so now she's just like, actually, you know what? Never mind. We're not going to do that. We're going to keep the Cortana. I guess we're going to keep the Cortana, Cortana thing going. And I'm just going to I'm going to give Halsey the stink eye for like 5 minutes while this board meeting happens. And then Halsey, she claps her hands and she's like, yay, I get to keep my stuff. And then she
Mhm.
talks with Master Chief. Master Chief explains a lot of the Forerunner Artifact stuff. And she's fascinated by it. And then Miranda Keyes throws a hissy fit. Why? Because Halsey got the artifact first. And now they're kind of exploring what that is. And then I believe the episode ends on kind of it ends on a note where Master Chief is basically explaining some of the stuff that he saw with the artifact, and while he's explaining it, you basically get to see a nice butt shot of Makee, and she's undressing out of her weird Covenant clothing, and yeah, and then you just get to see her butt and her side boob, and then that's basically where the end of the episode happens.
Yeah, just
Were
kind
you
of
guys surprised? Were you all surprised about the booty? There's booty in this episode.
it made no sense. I mean, I was whatever. At this point, they're gonna probably because another Paramount Plus show does weird stuff, not necessarily booty, but this like try to shock the audience type
Mm-hmm.
stuff. So it's just like, okay, I guess this is the type of show we're gonna have, where we're just gonna randomly do these things that are supposed to shock you and go, what? But
Whoa! There was a
no,
butt in this episode.
kind of
Hasty
rewinding a
butt.
little bit to the meeting with all the higher ups, like the, the thing that frustrates me most about this show is all these different people that we see that are supposed to be in charge, your Parangosky, your Keys, Lord Hood, we didn't get a lot of him, but he just seemed like some old dude that wanted to go take a nap. But like, to me, like nothing
He was commanding pretty good, I thought. Like he
he,
was had that commanding presence, like, all right, somebody needs to explain, otherwise I'm gonna put a foot up somebody's
yeah,
ass kind of a thing.
I don't know. It just none of these people come across with any sort of authority, like they know what they're doing. Like I said last episode with like Halsey and Parangosky, they just seem like two you know people that are just bickering and trying to silly little like, oh, I'll say we have this Katana project where it might cause issues if she says, oh, we it's Flash clones or whatever. I don't know. They don't. Again, it's a silver timeline, blah blah blah. But like they're nothing like their characters in the book. It's just they're these just people that have. I don't even know I don't know where I'm going with this. There's no strength to their characters whatsoever. They're just very lame in my book.
Right. It's more
It's
or
just
less. It's less of like an adaptation and more like a like a this story is based on Halo. It's not an
Yeah.
adaptation of
Well,
Halo.
again, it's like Parangosky in I don't know. I should look this up. I don't know if Oni exists in the Silver Timeline. She's the head of Oni though. This like deep, dark secret, crap. Like doing like what she probably did was put this, as we find out at this meeting too, is that this Venture guy was put in place by the UNC, right? You doing stuff like that to destabilize governments. They used to do later on in this, the games and the books. They kind of do some of the stuff with well, I guess they're not Covenant, but some alien races in the future, and it's like there's this just weird like Cold War weird shit going on with it. But like again, this she just seems like an angry mom in this,
Right.
like especially when she talks to Miranda. Like
Right. And they're all bickering with each other.
yeah.
Meanwhile, there's, a large alien race or a large
Hmm.
alien force that's basically wiping out planets and glassing them and all that. I mean, they call that out, that's something that does happen
Yeah.
throughout this episode, is that they do like glass planets and destroy entire colonies and things like that. So meanwhile, we're going to be bickering about what to do with Master Chief, I guess.
Yeah. And it's just yeah. And as far as the Makee stuff, I don't get that. I did find it interesting though when Chief was telling Halsey towards the end of the episode about touching the Forerunner object. She, if you notice, she cut him off when he started talking about his past,
Yeah. Yep.
which again that feeds into the whole like we're trying to hide you from whatever your family and your
Mhm.
past and all that stuff.
Which I'm not really sure why. Like why would they want to do that? Like the Spartans largely know why they're there. They're there to be super soldiers and
Hmm.
protect humanity. Like they're there to be soldiers.
Yeah. Well, I think that was a big deviation too from the books and what we know of the show so far. A lot of like when these, because they were all 6 when they were abducted. For those that don't know anything about the Halo story that might be listening, so like they were brought in, and a lot of them were told why they were brought in and given essentially the choice to stay or not. Right. So yeah, they're 6-year olds, and probably don't have the best judgment, especially when you're dropping something heavy like that on them. Like we're going to turn you into humanity's super soldiers, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like there was never like hiding the past from them. They were told straight up front, but here it's we're using drugs, and like, ooh, let's not talk about anything before the drugs, you
Yeah.
know because that might destabilize you even more.
Mm-hmm. So I kind of want to like, before we close this episode out, I kind of want to draw. I think it's interesting how they're drawing parallels between Master Chief's sort of history and Makee as well. So like when Makee is undressing, you do see that she's got a whole bunch of scars all over her back. In a similar fashion to like what we see scars on Master Chief from all the augmentation stuff and things like that. It's interesting how they're creating that parallel of they're both blessed ones, they're both abductees, they're both essentially held captive by their abductee, so to speak, and they're both special in their own regard. We don't know what is special about Makee yet because she doesn't appear to be some kind of like a super soldier or anything,
Hmm.
but we see a lot of parallels being drawn between those two characters. I'm interested to see what relationship they have towards each other. My thought was is that if they're gonna go the super cheesy route, they're like siblings or something like that. That they're gonna make them like that's Master Chief's sister from his forbidden family that he's not supposed to know
Yeah.
about or something like that. And they're gonna reveal that on episode 9 that in a flashback he's gonna realize that there's a little blonde girl in his family and she was abducted too and yada yada yada.
That's it. Her hair is like, isn't it super white in the show? Maki's like, right?
Yeah, it's like it's
And
like really really blonde.
yeah, and now it's a black and white flashbacks, but in the 2 flashbacks we got, there's a dog with what appears to be white hair. Maybe we find out that that's not actually a dog. It's you know, we'll get flashbacks in the future, and it's just another little girl, and it's actually his sister. But yeah, no, it's
Right.
Paramount Plus. I'm expecting it to be either their siblings or they
They're gonna
turn
try
into
it, yeah.
lovers or
Right.
some weird
They're
like
gonna have some goofy twist or something
yeah.
like that. Yeah. I don't know. What do you think, Heather? You think I'm on point?
I'm laughing at his sister as a dog.
Well, not like Like that's how his memory's suppressed, not that she's actually a
Makee is
dog.
actually the dog in the flashback.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm like trying to die over here quietly.
And then they like there's also one thing that I'm kind of worried about too, and I can totally see this happening. So I mentioned this to you late last week, Matt, that
Yep. I
I
know where you're
think
going.
yes, I think it's starting to make me think that with this kind of if this is the kind of episode that they're going to have, if they're going to have more of these, it's really going to slow the story's pace to a crawl. And unless something really big happens next episode that's going to advance like more because they keep talking about halo is a weapon, we got to stop the
Hmm.
halo, that sort of a thing. My thought is that season 1 is truly going to end at like they find halo, and that's it. That's why it's greenlit for a season 2 already, is because they really end it on a maybe it's like a fall of reach kind of a thing, and then they're on their way to halo at the end of the season.
It's kind of, yeah, we get like a almost a callback to Halo CE where that's where season 2 picks up.
Right. Yeah, they want to, maybe he jumps on board the Pillar of Autumn with Matt, with Captain Keyes and all that, and then they ditch on out of there. And yep, season 10 ends with them facing off. The ship is flying towards a halo, and Cortana says something like, I think we lost them or something like that, and then it ends. It cuts to black, and then we have to wait for season 2. That's what I'm worried about. I'm worried that they're gonna pull some bullshit like that.
And I've been worried about the same thing since you mentioned that to me.
I mean, I could see that, but I feel like depending on what they do, some of it will be necessary. I don't think they can fill an entire season with it. I just don't with how much they skip versus how much they they bring over. Okay, say that in English again. With how much they skip versus how much they dive into, right? Like I feel like we're bound to have more action shots in there and stuff like that. Like
Hmm.
I think there is some validity to that. Like there is a possibility that that's going to be the case, but like if as long as they keep doing things like this was a very necessary like world building thing, and I like I said I enjoyed this. I felt like this helps a lot with what they're trying to build, like setting aside what we all know to be the Halo series, because again this is the silver timeline,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um this this episode was important, and I'm hoping that they keep up the dynamic with like an action and then kind of like a splaining one, an action a splaining one,
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
um
didn't
I
I
think
didn't hate
it's
the episode.
no, I
Um
didn't. Yeah, and I didn't hate it either. I mean, like we've definitely seen a lot of reviews online talking about how like this is like way way worse, and even I was saying that in the Discord about how I was hearing that this episode is just it falls off super super hard and all that. And it's like, okay, like this was a big exposition dump of an episode, but
I,
it
I
wasn't.
didn't think it fell off though. I liked this episode. Like I thought it
Yeah,
was
like
fine.
I
I thought
think
there was
that
no
like
problem.
having kind of a slower episode was kind of okay. The more I watch this, the more I kind of see what they're doing with it, but it does make me think like, you know, they took creative liberties in places I wish they didn't, and they didn't
mhm.
take creative liberties in ways that I wish that they did.
That's like, I mean, that's putting it lightly because they're taking, and I think that's the struggle I still have and will have as somebody who's been a part of Halo for it since its inception. Well, not since its inception, since 2001. But I mean, it's, I think that's the thing I struggle with is just the amount of creative liberties. Is it's more like, well, why did you change that? Like, there was no
Right.
reason to change that. Like, why?
Mhm.
Like, and as dumb as it sounds, it's even little things of the fact that Master Chief was out of his armor twice in this episode.
Mhm.
And I mean, hell, that was something that 343 brought into their part of the universe when they took over Halo and started building. It was I forget what it's called. Actually meant to look it up, and I forgot to.
Those
Was this
machines that take
fancy
off the armor.
machine? Yeah, because this stuff is supposed to weigh a ton, right? It's one reason why they don't take their armor off a
Well,
lot,
that
right?
was the funny thing, right? So like when the Spartans are suiting up to go get him last episode, they like you see them in the machines,
Yep.
like
Yep.
as they're finishing putting on their armor.
But
Yeah.
somehow, well, I mean, I guess it would reason to be that Soren might have something like that
Hmm.
because he gets his armor on and off. That's
And
yeah,
again, you could argue the what was it? What was our ship name? The Stalwart something.
Stalwart Dawn, I think.
Stalwart Dawn. Like, I mean, you could argue there's probably one in there, but it was again, it was odd, and it's just little creative liberties that they take here and there that I do struggle. Like even something too that I was a little excited about seeing the rubble because again, obviously it could be different in the Silver Timeline, but that was kind of an interesting place in the books because it's one of the very few places in the Halo universe where there was some Covenant and humans actually living together in an uneasy kind of peace, right? I
Mm,
think it was.
yeah.
I don't quote me on this, but I think it was specifically the jackals, the Kigyar that they were living there, but also which is again funny. Kind of Reth is a real character in the books, and he's actually a jackal, and there's a whole little story that goes with him trying to undermine uh, stuff with on the rubble and anyways. But yeah, so
But
it's
yeah,
like even
it's
like
ways that
even
it's ways that they took creative liberties where they probably shouldn't have, because that actually would have been really interesting
yeah.
and cool if it was like if Reth was still a jackal and
Hmm.
he was talking to somebody of the Covenant, and it's just like, holy crap, like there's actual Covenant on this rock, like that's
Yeah.
insane.
And I think that would have actually kind of helped the world that they're building even more instead of I know, I'm sorry, Heather, I know you liked them, but the crazy Wrath that they have now, because the one thing they haven't done so far that they really kind of nailed down in the games and the books is like, you know, the Covenant and the Unity are at war, but they don't really point out that like the humans, the UNSC are losing and they're losing bad. And the whole goal right now, the Covenant, are to exterminate, all human life, right? They haven't really portrayed that in the Silver Timeline. So for all we know, they're just aliens versus humans. They're just fighting, whatever, right? So something like, oh, let's go to the rubble, and there are jackals there living with humans. It's plausible. It could be something that happens, right? You know, and I
Right.
think would have been again a really cool thing to where it's like, hey, I know a guy, and then Kwan and Chief kind of freak out, and then yeah, I mean, maybe that's where you have Chief freak out a little bit because there's a jackal. I'm used to killing all of them. Why are
There's a
we?
snake in my boot.
There's a snake in my boot, right? Yeah, so someone poisoned the water hole. Anyways,
Yeah,
but
no,
yeah,
I
I
think
mean,
that would be really cool, like world building too, showing that the Covenant isn't just all of this alien race. Like the
yeah,
alien races that are part of the Covenant are voluntarily part of that, and there's you know individuals of that alien race who decide not to just join up with the Covenant itself. I think
yeah.
that's interesting.
So it was unfortunate again. So it's like to me when there's kind of things were like, oh, how are they going to do this? This could be exciting. And then they take all these crazy creative liberties. It does, it is sometimes hard. But yeah, kind of back to the original point. I do think that it was probably a little overblown how bad this episode was from the press that got to see the first two episodes,
Yeah,
weeks ago.
yeah,
Uh,
I agree.
but I mean, I wish there was more. I wish
Yeah.
it wasn't some of the creative liberties they took.
All right. Well, so then, with that said, I mean, let's break it down. What would you give it for a score? I think last week we gave it. I think you gave last week a 3.
A three. I really struggle with the UNSC side of things because it doesn't make sense with people in the military how just incompetent they are or how they I don't know. They don't really kind of show authority and strength and intelligence. They're just a bunch of bickering, you know, kids. So that's where it really to me hurt this episode. Although again, I enjoyed it probably a little bit more maybe than last week as other than the plasma, kids getting blown up with plasma fire. I'd say maybe a 4.
Okay. So a little bit above, a little
Yeah,
bit
a little more
ahead of where.
enjoyable.
Yep, you got an extra point. At this rate, you'll be at at an 8 in no time.
Episode 9 will be a 10 out of 10.
There you go. What about you, Heather? What would you rate this one? Believe yours last week was a 4.
Yeah, I'm at like a 6-7 on this one. I really enjoyed this.
All right.
I
She's on
I
board.
yeah,
Wait,
I'm on board with this, and I'm actually excited to kind of now that Master Chief is back with the UNSC, I'm excited to see his interaction with the Spartans because we got to see a little bit of like, oh well, he's got a plan. He's always got a plan. Like I'm interested to see their interactions with him and stuff like that, and how much of that code they have, with each other. I'm excited for this. I thought it was decent. There's a few like creative liberties, like you said, which I mean, I don't have the same thing to the extent that you guys do, but I there's a few things where it was kind of like, oh, okay, sure, yeah, well, that's a thing, but overall, I liked it. Six,
Okay.
7 for me.
All right. I mean, I'd say I'd put this at like a 5 for me. I mean, I think it was just an average episode. I honestly thought that it was a lot of like, it was a big exposition dump. They took a lot of creative liberties, like, why are we telling people already that Halo is a weapon? I loved that idea that the Covenant believe it to be some sacred artifact, that they don't already know that it is a weapon, that it was just like, it crushes their worldview when they find that out. And that's what, really motivates the Arbiter later on to go do his thing. Now, whether they decide to go that route is up to the showrunners, right? If they, we suspect, the internet suspects that the elite that's been hanging around is going to be the Arbiter, but we don't know. So it's stuff like that that kind of makes me go like, yeah, like why did you take creative liberties there? But like, yeah, you have a bunch of other places that you could have improved a lot as well. The Madrigal stuff is so boring. I don't care. I agree with you, Matt. The UNSC stuff is really boring because you can clearly tell that the people who are writing this show have got like no military background whatsoever. I really do think that like
Yeah.
they need to start consulting more military types, or like do a lot more research on military organizational structures and things like that, because yeah, it's clear that they have like they're trying to run this like as like they're trying to run like a more militaristic Starfleet or something like that, and it just
Mhm.
comes off as just so boring. It's so
Yeah.
boring and just incompetent is what it
Mhm.
seems like. So
Yeah.
other than
It
that, but
hurt.
yeah, like all the stuff with Master Chief and Soren, I thought was actually really cool. Like I loved seeing that sort of background of Reach. I liked that Soren reminded me of like a Spartan-y Dave Chappelle. Um,
Yeah.
I thought it was all like, I want to see more of Soren. I hope Soren becomes more of a main character, like more of a recurring character, because he was just cool. Like he was
Mhm.
like, that was what I was hoping from Master Chief, is that Master Chief would just kind of ooze cool. Because if you go back and like play the games and all that, granted the showrunners didn't do that, but Master Chief is he's a very cool cucumber. Like he does not get riled up like that. He doesn't get
Mhm.
unhinged and you know hyper emotional and things like that. He's, if anything, he would probably say some sort of a smart ass remark before he would get really angry.
Yeah.
Um, and I would
I
rather see that kind of a Master Chief than,
I
what
I
am
agree with
I? What am I?
I agree with you. As far as Soren, he's probably my third favorite character though, behind Chevy Tahoe and Pointy Elite, bro.
And the
So
pointing elite.
please, if you haven't watched this show, at least go try and look it up online. I don't know, maybe I'll throw it up on our
Get a
Discord
gif
or
of it, yeah.
yeah.
Make a
I
gif of it.
that scene was just like, I'm like, damn, the elites look good. They did a really good. What's he doing? Like,
What the hell is he drawing? He's air
show
drawing.
me, and then he does some angry point into the air, and yeah, mimes the circle. Anyways, but no, I'm enjoyed Soren. I agree with you there. So
Cool. All right, well, that's going to wrap it up for this week's review of Halo, the TV series. Thank you for listening with us. Reminder that you can like, subscribe, follow us, join us on Discord. You can find the link at campfiregamingpodcast.com. Follow us on Twitter at campgamepod. Subscribe to us on YouTube. If you're listening on YouTube, throw us a like. We would love to hear from you in the comments as well. And with that said, we'll see you next week. Good luck, stay safe, and as always, we'll see you next time around the campfire.